Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another edition of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. We are so delighted to have you here with us. Please hit share and tag your friends right now. This is a global conversation, and you're going to get a chance to learn about different aspects of the crisis we're in right now. Please tag a friend, hit retweet. We're live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Well, let me tell you who we have as our guest today. We're going to be joined by Ambassador Richard Varma. He is the former ambassador of the US to India and vice chairman of the Asia Group, and you'll get a chance to talk to him. I'm so excited that today we are in partnership with scroll.in. It's India's leading independent news source for analysis and culture with a focus on in-depth political and cultural commentary. It aims to add critical perspectives to the most important news stories shaping contemporary India. Its journalists have won both local and international awards, including the Ramnath Goenka Excellence in Journalism Award and the Red Ink Awards for Excellence in Journalism. So please tag your friends, please hit share right now, and tell us where you're watching from. We want you to join us in this conversation. Tag your friends, tell us where you're watching from. I'm in New York, and I am on day 41 of our lockdown in New York City, and this is the 41st straight show that we've been doing. 41 days of this show. I've been so touched by the enormous response from all over the planet, and thank you so much for being here and for participating with us. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and I am the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook University School of Journalism on Long Island. Today, we have a conversation that's going to bridge two continents and more because we have folks joining us from around the world. Let me first thank our sponsors. We are sponsored by Primitive Book. It's a new future of work book from Hachette, a provocative look at how the world's most successful people tap their primal instincts during moments of adversity. Order today from your favorite bookstore. The author is Marco Greenberg. He's a dear friend of mine, and he was so kind to use his sponsorship dollars on our show. And the website is primitivebook.com, or wherever you order your digital books, or in person or in print books as well. And here's a great blurb from Barbara Corcoran of Shark Tank. She says, Primitive provides a path forward to unleash your inner entrepreneur. And Daniel Pink says, it captures insights and advice that everyone can use to thrive in the constantly evolving workplace. We're also sponsored by the Girl Scouts of Greater New York. Help us donate 100,000 boxes of cookies to healthcare workers. Donate today. Go to this link, bit.ly/gscookies1, bit.ly/gscookies1, and make a donation. Your money will go to buy boxes of cookies that are then donated to healthcare workers in New York City. What a great way to support both the healthcare workers as well as the Girl Scouts. So please go ahead and do that. We are so grateful to our sponsors. And if you'd like to sponsor us, please let us know. It's very easy. My email address is sree@sree.net, sree@sree.net. All right, I think we are ready to meet the ambassador. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Please hit share and tag your friends right now. And here I go, bringing in Ambassador Richard Varma. How are you, sir?
Hi, how are you? Great to see you.
Great to have you here and great that you could be with us. How are you feeling? Where are you? What are you up to? This is a question that I ask of all our guests.
Yeah, so we're doing fine. I know this has been a really tough time for so many people, but really we're well. We're in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. in Bethesda, Maryland. I think we're on week 6 of our home learning escapade with our kids. We have twins in the 6th grade and we have a 9th grader, and we've been teleworking for about 6 weeks as well. So difficult combination, but everyone's going through it, and we're just getting through one day at a time. And so far, so good. But okay. let me also thank you for what you're doing. 41 days of connecting people. It's really so important that we all stay connected, share information, but just the personal connection that you have with so many people around the world. We're really grateful for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. Here's Ron watching in Dubai. And he says, finally, I get a chance to watch. Greetings. And by the way, as I name the cities where people are, Ambassador, tell us if you've been or any memories or even any of your journeys there. So Ron's in Dubai. So we'll let you go first with Dubai.
Yeah, well, of course, Dubai is, such a transit hub. But really, my greatest memory of Dubai is losing my 3 kids at the Atlantis Resort at the water park. But I try not to remember that. And but no, it's an incredible place. And when we think about India, of course, in the Gulf region and in the Middle East, we think of this really burgeoning relationship between these states, these important critical states in the region, in the Gulf region, and certainly India. But what a place! Thank you for joining.
And we have Jonathan watching from the East Village. He's got his mask on.
Yeah, important. I mean, I think, Sree, one thing we should talk about is how much our lives are going to change after we get through to the other side of this. What's it going to be like to get on a bus, get on the metro, get on the subway, get on an airplane? Will we all be wearing masks? It's certainly possible, depending on where we live and what our day-to-day lives are like.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about some memories of New York City and the East Village?
Yeah, well, we love New York. New York is probably the one place I'd like to live besides Washington. It is incredibly cosmopolitan, just such a diverse city, such an exciting city. And again, we're so sorry for what New York has had to go through over these past few weeks and months. But no question, the country is thinking of New York every day and other impacted areas.
Thank you. And Linda's watching from Long Island. Have you been?
I have been to Long Island. My college roommate was from Long Island, from Syosset, I think. And so I was there a bunch of times. Yeah, great.
Very nice. And Stefan says, good morning. And so looking forward to hearing all of the ambassador's insights. No pressure, Ambassador.
No pressure at all. Yeah.
And our producers are watching. Rose Horowitz is tweeting at Rose Horowitz 31, joining from Connecticut. And the hashtag is Sree COVID-19 call. So please go on to Twitter and share her tweets, as well as everyone's tweets that are there. Rose Horowitz 31 and Vandana_Menon is our other producer. Thanks to them both. Shalini is watching from Washington, D.C. What can you tell us about Washington?
Well, it's a place that I think has let a lot of people down. I mean, there's incredible heroes here, but when I think about kind of our strong centralized response in our federal system, unfortunately, we've had 50 different responses and 50 governors and thousands of mayors and local officials from across the country, and we're just missing the kind of strong national guidance and response, and that's really directed at not at our healthcare and public health establishment, but just I think some of the political decision making. And again, if you want to see a contrast in strong centralized federal system, we look at how India has handled the response versus how the United States has handled the response. Two federal systems, two very different approaches.
In fact, we are going to show you and discuss some of the responses of both countries. Let's go on to some more comments just so you get a sense of people watching from around the world. And Scroll is reminding folks to join in the comment section, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. Lots of people are asking for a return of morning fix, one of the elements that people are used to on their platform. Stefan is writing to his contacts. Everybody's participating here. We love that. And Lori is watching from Dobbs Ferry, New York, which is just north of Manhattan. And we have people in India watching and other places as well. So thank you all. Let me start, Ambassador, if it's okay with you. I'm just going to go in and show you this chart, which you have seen. Of course, this is the rolling number that comes out of the FT every day. Yeah. And they're looking at the curves. And this is for yesterday. And we'll just orient everyone. You can see the China yellow. You can see South Korea in the light blue. And then you can see the US at the very top there in pink. and then look for India. It's kind of hard to even find India on there, but there's India in the green. So overall, as you look at this, what are your thoughts? I will just frame it by saying, if we remember, Australia had all of this happen at the worst time for them. They had the fires, and then with the fires came the tragic of the pandemic, and that's what you're seeing there. So any reflections as you see this?
Yeah, the first point I would say is just a broader point about Asia. You know, I think back to the end of January or middle of January, and we were thinking about this crisis being an Asian crisis. Asia was the epicenter of the epidemic. And then if you fast forward just a few weeks and look at your chart even here today, we think about Asia as a potential site of recovery, so an epicenter of renewal. And unfortunately, we think of Europe and America as now the epicenter of the epidemic. And thankfully, some of those numbers are starting to turn downward, but the numbers in the U.S., and we may get to this, are too high. 825,000 cases in the U.S., 45,000 deaths. Something went badly wrong, and we have to figure out what happened so it doesn't happen again. I think the open question for us when we look at what's happening in the Indo-Pacific, you know, India through Australia, is can a second wave be averted? And I know there are concerns in Singapore, in Japan, in China, ongoing concerns about India. But again, the numbers have been very low, and we can debate about whether that's because of a lack of testing or not. But clearly the strong containment measures have had a positive impact. So that's the first thing. Can we stop a second wave in Asia? And can the government do what's necessary from both fiscal and monetary policy to get those small and medium businesses back? I think we in the West can learn a lot from what's happening if there is, in fact, an Asian recovery. But ultimately, this is a public health crisis. And if we don't solve the health part of it, the economic part of it will continue, unfortunately.
All right, looks like you're popular in Dubai because Amna is also watching from there. Okay. And we should tell folks that we also met at the Dubai airport, which is a place, as you said, for transit, lots of people all over the world. I think we were both going in different directions, but we met in Dubai, kind of that crossroads of the world. New York likes to think of itself as well. We have so many questions and comments coming in. Rao's watching from Poland, and thank you, Rao, for watching. And he says, greetings to the ambassador. Have you been?
I've been to Poland. I've been to Warsaw and to Krakow. That was when I was I started my career in the U.S. Air Force, and did some joint training with the Polish military back a long time ago. Don't even want to say what year that was, but great people, great country. And Sree, I have to say, the first time we actually connected was in Delhi when you came to the embassy. And I remember you emailed me and said we're going to do a Facebook Live, interview from the embassy, and I had no idea what you were talking about at the time. So I've since come a little ways on my technological know-how, but again, you've been pulling a lot of us along for a long time.
Well, that's very kind of you. We'll show excerpts from that amazing day. It's what I call a life highlight, where we got to meet at Roosevelt House, which is the home of the Indian ambassador, the residence, and you took us on an intimate public trip, but kind of just through all kinds of things you showed us, including photographs of your family. That was so meaningful to me, and we have thousands of people watching as we do today as well. So thank you for that, Ambassador, and for remembering that moment as well. Anil is happy to see good content on YouTube, and so people are talking about that. Joji says, the good and the bad about the U.S. is that martial law or the likes is never an option. Freedom is a different yardstick. How fair is it to compare the response when culturally it's not apples to apples? So that's Joji's question to you, sir.
Yeah. I mean, look, freedom is a different yardstick, but look, both, if he's talking about not to compare India and the United States, I would say, look, both countries are democracies. Both countries are have open kind of federal democratic systems. When I think about, and I know the 9/11 comparisons are not not totally appropriate here. But I do think of the strong centralized response we had after such a tragic event. When I hear the rhetoric out of the White House about, this is up to the governors, and you have different governors competing for the same sets of supplies, something has gone badly wrong in the national response. We love our freedom, but we also have a social compact with our government that says in times of crisis, you're going to step up and actually defend and protect the interests of our way of life and our health and our safety and security. And there is obviously a balance. And I know the financial impacts on people have been severe, but we have to get this balance right. And I don't think taking 50 different responses is the right way to go. I appreciate some of the guidelines that we've had come out of the CDC, and obviously Dr. Fauci's a hero to millions of people now. But I think once we get through this phase of it, we are going to have to stand up a 9/11 style type commission. We are going to have to look at what went wrong. We are going to have to figure out how we're never again short of ventilators or gloves or masks or testing kits. So we have some hard decisions to make. So some learnings, a lot of learnings to come out of this.
Absolutely. I just want to show everyone and you this headline from the New York Times that's quite stunning when you think about it. It says here, Trump head of government leans into anti-government message. Those governors who are being protested by the Trump fans and Trump acolytes are protesting guidelines that are put in by the governors, but they're following federal guidelines issued by the Trump administration itself.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot going on here, and it's challenging to unpack. I will say, as much as we see the news reports and we see the people out on the street, I think it is a very, very, very small percentage of people who are actually out challenging healthcare workers and protesting about what different states are doing. I think the vast, vast majority of Americans really understand how serious this is. I think everyone appreciates how difficult this has been for people, and hopefully there is a bit of an end in sight, or as the president says, some light at the end of the tunnel. So I don't want to make it seem like so many people are out there, but there's a lot to unpack there. There's some doubts about institutions. There's doubts about people. Have doubts about the government. They have doubts about science, and I think as a society, we have to be able to accept scientific conclusions and judgments from our governments. And so there's a lot more happening in those protests than I think are just about the COVID situation.
Absolutely right, Ambassador. Folks, if you're watching right now, please hit share, please retweet, please comment so that we can get your questions directly to Ambassador Richard Varma. He's Richard R. Verma on Twitter, Verma. Please share right now. We have people watching from around the world, so let's show the Ambassador where people are, including folks who are watching from Philadelphia. That last question from Joji was from Philadelphia. And we also have Shaker is watching. Hello from India. It's not safe here too. Talk a little bit about that. How do you feel where you are in terms of safety and how you're protected from everything that's going on?
Yeah, look, I think I really appreciate what the people in this area, the Washington, Maryland, Virginia area have done. I think they've come together really well. Look, we can still go for a walk. We can still go for a jog. We can get out of our house. I know people in India have it much tougher. I think the lockdown that India has implemented is like no other country has done. Not even being able to leave your house. So a lot of personal sacrifice during this particular time. So when I think about what we've gone through, yes, it's hard, but I know people have suffered far more and suffered from a personal standpoint, from a health standpoint, from a financial standpoint. But, I just think this is a time to really come together, not only within our country, but across countries. And I think that's something we have to think about, is why the international response also has been so lacking. The G20, the G7, the kind of why every country, we've talked about how every state has had to come up with its own formula. Why has every country had to come up with its own response and its own policy on pharmaceuticals, its own policy on supply chain and export controls? We really do need a more global perspective. We are in this together, and I hope that's the one message I want to leave with people here, is that we are pulling for everybody, regardless of where you live. We've got these modern problems are transnational. We've been talking about transnational threats for 2 decades. We've now got to have transnational solutions.
I love that. Transnational threats require transnational solutions. Folks, if you're watching right now, this is a conversation with the former ambassador of the United States to India, Richard Varma, and I'm Sree Sreenivasan in New York. He's in suburban DC, and we are thrilled to have you all from all over the world watching us and learning from the ambassador. We should also point out that you've just completed a milestone in your own education, so we can talk about that. We planned this because you said you were really busy until Wednesday. You were hoping you were kind of just pushing it out there, and we will forget about it. But here we are. We held you to it, Ambassador.
Yeah. So, gosh, I don't even want to tell you how long ago, but I started my PhD at Georgetown University years ago in the government department with specialization in international relations. And before I headed out to India, I had finished the coursework and the comprehensive exams, and then took a leave of absence. And of course, didn't ever think I would finish the dissertation part of it. So I thought I would be, everything but the dissertation and never graduate. And I give the department and my committee a lot of credit for pushing me to finish, which I finished this week. I turned in on Monday, and it is a study of the history of the U.S.-India relationship since 1947 forward, using a few case studies of what went right and what went wrong. And it's actually, it's titled Overcoming the Hesitations of History, an Analysis of U.S.-India Ties. And it builds on this quote that Prime Minister Modi used when he came to the Congress in 2016 and addressed a joint session of Congress. And he says, that to the members of Congress, we finally overcome the hesitations of our history together. And so the dissertation picks up on that really important phrase, and it tests it. It tests that question. Have we overcome those hesitations? What are they? Why have they been there? And we look at 5 years. We look at 1962, when President Kennedy was president, 1971, President Nixon, 1998, when President Clinton was president, 2005 with President Bush, and 2015 with President Obama. And so it's a fun kind of compare and contrast. If I ever get my act together, maybe we can put it out as a book, and maybe someone besides my dad and my spouse can actually read it.
Thank you, Ambassador. We're just showing parts of of the website about the Asia Group. Tell us about the Asia Group.
Yeah. So as I said, I started my career as a lawyer, and then I spent maybe 2/3 of my career in the government, in the Congress, State Department, overseas. When I was returning from India, my good friend Kurt Campbell had started a firm called the Asia Group. Started it about 6 years ago. Kurt is kind of the leading voice on the Indo-Pacific, really in the United States, and so he asked me to join, and which I was very excited to do. And so it's been about 3 years this summer, and it's a strategic advisory firm. We really work across the Asia Pacific. The fundamental premise of the firm is that the economic activity, the kind of excitement is happening in this region, and we work with a lot of U.S. and multinational companies, nonprofits. So it's been a lot of fun, and really grateful to be part of a terrific team.
And for those of you just joining, we're in a conversation with Ambassador Richard Varma. Thank you so much for being here, and please share your comments, tag your friends, let them join and learn from the ambassador. His career highlights is listed on his website: U.S. Ambassador to India, 2014 to 2017, representing President Barack Obama. He was the Assistant Secretary of State for Legislative Affairs. He was National Security Advisor to the Senate Majority Leader, and he was in the U.S. Air Force as Judge Advocate, and he will tell us what that exactly means. He was also, and his expertise is listed as strategic geopolitical dynamics, Indo-Pacific region, South Asia and India, trade and international law, defense trade, and also being the father of twins. That's enormous amount of knowledge required that you've gained. I'm a father of twins as well, as you know, and I think there's a special bond among fathers of twins, parents of twins, because it's its own adventure, and you're getting to know your family, as we all are, a little more intimately than we might have before.
Yeah. So we have twins in the 6th grade, and we have a 9th grader as well. And, it's been interesting. The 9th grader, pretty self-sufficient. She locks herself in her room each day and probably has a bunch of synchronous classes. The 6th graders are doing great. But we can't leave them for, hours at a time like we can the 9th grader. After a couple hours, I think a lot of the roads lead back to Netflix and Disney Plus. So we have to be careful on that. But it's been incredible to watch their resilience, and they're teaching me a lot too. And it's just been it's been special to be here with them during what is again a very difficult time.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is to connect people and have them share information and learn from each other. Shaker asks, is it safe to close the lockdown in May? He's applying it to India, but I think we could also talk about the social distancing that's being changed here. The guidelines are changing here as well.
Yeah, they are changing. And, I don't want to punt on this question and say it's a public health question, but clearly this is going to be decided by the public health community with the political leaders. And I think the trends we've seen are good. This is the question, Sree, I will tell you, we're wrestling with now on a day-to-day basis with the companies that we talk to and the universities and nonprofits. How do we open? What are the steps to get back, not necessarily to normal, but can you do a phased opening? What are the testing procedures that you might have to put in place for your employees as they come back to work? What happens if one of them gets sick? Then what do you do? These are all really difficult questions, but they are solvable questions. So look, you guys, we're going to come out of this. I don't think it's going to be months from now that we go back to work. I think it'll be weeks. I'm hopeful of that, but it may be very different. It may be very phased in. And every country is going to have to assess kind of the threat of a second wave and a second spread versus the impact to the economy. Difficult questions. I don't think there are absolute, right answers here. A lot of different balancing. And a lot of this is what we're doing is we're kind of treading water until we have the health solutions in place, the vaccine in place, the more comprehensive testing in place. I think I saw a number that suggested only 4 million Americans had actually been tested, right? So this is a challenge when you don't have a vaccine, when you don't have comprehensive testing. How do you turn the spigots back on? How do you let everyone back onto the subways, the planes? Just going to be very different. I think we're going to live our lives very differently for the foreseeable future.
I agree. And one of the things that I worry about is, when will I get on a plane, go visit my brother in Dubai,
right,
my parents in Kerala? Those are things that we worry about, because you can imagine, Ambassador, that you're on that flight to India, 15, 18 hours, and the first person to cough, they're going to be escorted off the plane without a parachute, right? They're just going to be... Right. And that's the danger, and that's the worry that we're going to have. And the person may be just coughing because he's allergic to something, but people are going to be irrational, as we've seen already in so many ways. Let me pull back up that chart, if I may, and just remind people that South Korea and the United States got its first confirmed case the same day. And this is why federal responses matter, why technology matters, why public buy-in matters, why decisive action matters, and you're seeing that. They also had their first 100 cases roughly around the same time, and the number of deaths, the South Korean deaths are so low compared to America. Every death matters, but this is a lesson for Americans as they look to what is happening and where we go from here.
Yeah, there's a lot to study and a lot to learn. We don't fully understand why some of the country differences have been what they have been. Clearly, South Korea got out in front very early on testing, and I've heard the people say, look, you can't compare South Korea to the United States, two totally different economies, two totally different sizes of population. But look, I think we should learn whatever we can, both the good and the bad of what's been working in other countries. Again, that's why I think this kind of Asian led recovery is a very, very interesting question for those of us in the United States trying to figure out how to get this economy going again as well.
And that's something that we'll, of course, be looking at. We have a comment I wanted to share from Prachi Jatania, who's watching and says, this is very topical and great insights, Rich. So thank you for that. And our friend Preeti Davra, who's watching, says, please tell us about one of your favorite memories of India and what you remember about it. Do you think India is better suited to handle this crisis than the United States? There she pivoted from a nice, simple softball question about your favorite memories to a policy question. She's watching from Singapore. So please tell us. And by the way, maybe it's also fraught to say, what's your favorite memory? Because so many places you went to, people will take it personally if you don't name every state and every city and every meal you had in 3 years in India.
Yeah. Well, let me say a couple things. First, it was the honor of a lifetime to serve there. There's just no question. And there's this, when we talk about U.S.-India history, there is this great passage in Ambassador Galbraith, who was, this very famous U.S. ambassador to serve in India. He talks about when President Kennedy called him and said, I want you to go to India. And Galbraith says, look, I want to go to India, but I hear I may get selected to replace you, President Kennedy, in the U.S. Senate. He says, what do you think about that? And Kennedy says to Galbraith, he says, going to India is more important by a factor of 5 to 1 than serving in the U.S. Senate. And it was such an interesting remark. And Galbraith says, I got it. I'll go do that. And he was, this incredible ambassador. And we had the same kind of experience in terms of being able to get around the country. I got to every state in India, which was not the easiest thing to pull off just logistically, but we were able to do that.
They were also adding more states as you were there.
They were, yes, exactly. I have this running debate with Ambassador Wisner about who was the first U.S. ambassador to go to all states, and Ambassador Wisner says it was me. And I said, well, look, when you went, there were only 25 states, I think, and so when I went, there were 29 or so. I've lost the count. But what a privilege. I think, when I think about some of the really special moments, obviously going back to Jalandhar in Punjab, and going to the one-room flat where my mom and grandma grew up after partition, going to the school in a slum area of Jalandhar where the school still exists, where my grandmother taught for decades. And they showed me they were able to find her pay records from the 60s. And having these elderly women in their 70s and 80s come out and squeeze my cheeks and say, without your mom and grandma, we would have been on a really bad track. They set us right. They showed us the right way. They were strong ladies. And of course, my dad, who grew up not far from there, went to DAV College, and I was able to go there and give the commencement address. So, gosh, what an opportunity, what a special moment for me. Most people don't get the chance to go back and see really where they're from and what they're all about and what's it about. And, I tell a lot of young people, you don't know where you're going in life until you really know and understand where you're from. And I was able to really go back and understand where we're from, what we're about, and what their stories were about. So just so grateful to President Obama, and the team for selecting me, but also to Prime Minister Modi and the team for really having a period of U.S.-India ties where we were able to surge those ties as well.
I love that, surge the ties. We're just looking at through your Facebook. I'm trying not to show your personal photos, but so maybe as we scroll through here, you can, if you remember what some of these are, I'm sure a lot of them are a blur, but these are our friends at In Diaspora.
Yeah.
You have spoken with them, and you've been a very active member. Some of these are from India. Do you remember any of these moments? Do you want to? Which one?
Yeah, I remember. Those are our friends from Rishikesh and the ashram there, which is so special, and a lot of different talks and a lot of different college visits and high school visits across India. There's the swearing in the middle of the page. There's the minister. Yeah, I mean, I think part of some of my most favorite moments were actually going when we went across India to go into the communities and go into the schools and go to the different universities and colleges, just hear what was on young people's minds and how excited they were about where India was headed in this century. It was just a totally different, I hear about the stories of, that my dad would tell me about growing up. His entire senior year of high school in 1947 was suspended because they didn't know what was going to happen, right? They were hanging on, trying to build a country. And when we're talking to all these young kids, they were not only hanging on, they were driving forward, and they knew they were going to be the architects of this century. And so I think that's why President Obama used to say this partnership can be the defining partnership of this century if we get it right. And I really believe that. That's a very memorable day. That picture you pulled up is the swearing in the State Department 8th floor in the diplomatic space, day that I won't really forget.
What is happening on the 8th? So how does that work? You get swearing in here, and then you go to India, and then you present your credentials?
Exactly. Well, there's a big step before that, and that's trying to navigate the halls of Congress too, and make sure you actually get confirmed. We were in a really tricky position because the president had already announced that he was going to India for Republic Day as the chief guest, which had never happened before. And he was going back for his second visit, which had also never happened before. No U.S. president had ever gone to India twice during their term in office. And here I was, being nominated while Congress was essentially in a lame duck session in 2014. So just trying to get there was a bit of a miracle. We had our hearing in the Senate on December 2nd. We were confirmed by the Senate on December 9th. And I think I had my swearing in on December 16th. And we were on a plane on December 27th. So the whole thing was a small miracle.
Talk to us about President Obama and the call you got, or how that happened.
Yeah.
That he decided you're the man to send, and to send an Indian American to India. And you remember this moment where I introduced you by accident as the Indian ambassador. I meant to say Indian American, all of that. Stephen, I'll do it again if I'm not careful. Talk about that. And we want to hear about President Obama and your relationship, your connection, and then what it meant for him to send an Indian American and for you to be that Indian American.
Yeah, it's a great question. I got a call really out of the blue in the summer of 2014 from Susan Rice, who was then the National Security Advisor. And I remember at the time, she said, the president really wants you to go to India. And I said, great, to do what? I really had no idea. I was totally dumbfounded by it. I had a chance to see the president then a few weeks later. And he was very supportive, very excited. And he said, so how do you think it's going to be being Indian American? And I just said, sir, look, this is a huge job. It's now our second largest embassy in the world. You should send somebody who can do the management piece, the foreign policy piece, the security piece, the trade piece. If you think I can do all that, then I think being Indian American, I think, can be an advantage, but it can't be the only reason you're going. But what I said is that the issues that are being debated on TV and the coffee shops, on the streets, were issues that we have an appreciation for that. Again, my family kind of growing up, we're debating a lot of the same issues. And so, yes, but you'd have to work hard and prove yourself. And I think there were plenty of people who were skeptical, especially on the Indian side, who said, look, we want a real diplomat. And I get that. And so I think we had to work really hard to show that we knew the subject matter, that we could deliver on the bilateral kind of elements. And again, if you can do that, then I think the other components were a positive.
I hear you. Thank you so much. Most people would be lobbying, begging for that opportunity to go serve in India, and there you were first saying, hold on there. And so that was interesting. We have a question that's come in. I'm just going to read this to you. You started as your career as an armed forces legal officer. Do you think that specific perspective has changed and informed how you approach international law and diplomacy? And the person asking is a lawyer. So,
yeah. Yes. I mean, I don't know if it changed, but I certainly have so much respect for our military, for our system. And again, both the Indian and the U.S. systems are constructed similarly. In this, we have civilian oversight of the military. We have rule of law. We have respect for the Geneva Conventions. And I am concerned about how President Trump has kind of found his way in to what was a very sacred bond between soldiers, sailors, airmen, and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And so it's critical. And look, I think we have to acknowledge where the U.S. has made mistakes. We have learned from those mistakes over really the last several decades about how difficult prosecuting a war on terrorism could be, with new authorities, new threats, and finding that balance. But yes, it shaped my view of international law, principally how important international law is, not how it impedes our sovereignty or how it impinges upon our individual rights, but how essential it is to binding our countries together, particularly in times like this. And so for those people who are skeptical of Paris Climate Agreement or Iran nuclear accords, or, I say, look, we have to cooperate in the world. The international legal system, the international institutions are not perfect, but better we're a part of it and better we shape it than just sit on the sidelines and criticize it.
Thank you, Ambassador. We'll just remind everybody what we're doing. We are live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and we're talking to Ambassador Richard Varma. My name is Sree Sreenivasan. I'm at Sree on Twitter, at sreenet on YouTube, where my archives are of all 41 straight days of the lockdown here in New York. And we are partnering today with scroll.in, a terrific Indian news cultural analysis website that the ambassador himself knows well. And we're getting questions from around the world. I just want to show you a couple of comments. Terrific journalist Vinay Kamat says, a great conversation with the ambassador, great insights. Thank you very much. We know that journalists are listening, and we will be asking the ambassador about some of the news of the last couple of days. The immigration suspension/ban, we'll ask him about that. We'll also ask him about the big news of the day in the business sector, where Facebook has announced a strategic investment in one of the big Indian telecom companies. We won't put him on the spot if he hasn't had a chance to catch up on all his India news, but we want to talk about all of that. And then I want to press him publicly about what his plans are going forward. And so we have to do all of that in about 15 minutes, Ambassador. So we're going to go for quick comments and quick questions as we go here. I want to show you that we have at least one other ambassador watching, in my father, T.P. Srinivasan, who is Sreenev on Twitter. And he said, please give my regards to Ambassador Varma. And I love seeing that and seeing that connection. We have someone watching from Hamilton Heights in Manhattan. And that just the word Hamilton in New York, as you know, triggers memories of Hamilton the musical. Yes. So that A, to ask you if you've had a chance to see it, and B, what is your cultural diet right now when you have so much indoor time? What are some of the things you're watching, reading before we get to the harder political questions, I'm going to let you think about that and answer that for a minute.
Yeah, great question. So we did see Hamilton, and I will say that the producer of Hamilton, Tommy Kail, is a graduate of Sidwell Friends School in Washington, D.C., where my 3 kids go to school. So, and he's come back a few times to talk about what it was like to put together Hamilton. So incredible show. You know, I talked about the 3 kids here, and my wife and I are products of the 80s generation. And so we are having a constant debate about whether 80s movies are actually very good or not. And so with all this time at home, we've gone through the list of movies from the 80s and early 90s. Last night it was Crimson Tide, which, yes, has a lot of bad language, but was a pretty decent film. But we've had some failures on the 80s front. So I'd welcome your viewers' recommendations on movies. But you know, we've been doing what everyone else has been doing. We've been out walking the dog. We've been trying to get a little bit of exercise. We've been cooking a lot together and just trying to get some work done. And remarkably, the workday seems a bit longer because we're online the entire day and we never really sign off. So there's also that element of it as well.
We have a comment from Vipul Anand says, will there be a second wave in South Asian countries, in India? And if yes, can developing countries bear the cost of that second wave?
Yeah, we're watching that very, very closely. And I think these next 2 weeks in India in particular are so important. And I think that's why you see the Prime Minister extended the lockdown. Again, the numbers coming out of India are good. The public health community can debate whether that's because there hasn't been enough testing. But of course, look, it's such a densely populated country that there are concerns about whether things spread rapidly. But look, let's see what happens the next couple of weeks. I'm hopeful that India and other countries in South Asia can come out of this. It will require, on the resources, I think, look, we all need help. I've seen other countries contributing to our response. We're going to have to contribute to other countries, but this is where it gets back to the international solution. And Sree, you asked about some of the news of the recent day, and maybe this is a good segue into the immigration issue, if we can, just because the president has suspended immigration into the United States for 60 days. On top of which, there was already, you really couldn't come to the United States anyway if you wanted to from outside. I mean, essentially all travel has been shut off. And so it's disappointing. I think this is disappointing because it didn't really have a public health component to it. It obviously was a political message. And I think, you know, I can't even call it a dog whistle anymore. If you can hear it, it's probably not a dog whistle. And we heard it loud and clear. And I think these attacks on immigrants, the attacks on Asian Americans are particularly sinister. And I think regardless of your political party or persuasion in the United States, I hope that people can reject the kind of nativism and xenophobia and frankly that underlies a lot of these attacks on immigration. And it's been going on for several years. And it's something that has to be defeated. It can't be catered to or kind of just talked about around the edges, or let's try to understand what's happening. But you know, this is the part I think that bothers me the most about what's happening in the United States. It is redefining what it actually means to be American. And I'll give you 2 examples. I think about the Marines that defend our embassy around the world, but also in India, and the young Marines that I got to meet. I bet you half of them were not born in the United States, and I bet you half of them, I'm just talking about Delhi now, that English was not their first language. And yet these were the greatest of great Americans, that they were going to put their life on the line every night, every day to defend our country. I think about my mother, who was so proud of her Indian roots, her religion, her heritage, her food, her music. And yet she was also so proud to become an American citizen. later in life when I was in high school, and how proud she was to come home from the courthouse that day with her American flag, and how much she contributed to American society. She was a great American. And so, look, when I think about our current crisis, and these statistics come from Catherine Rampel from the Washington Post, 18% of our healthcare workers are immigrants. 23.5% of our long-term care workers are immigrants. 30% of our nursing home staff are immigrants. 35% of our agriculture, crop production workers, immigrants. 13% of our postal service, immigrants. 22% of the folks that do science and R&D, immigrants. Nearly 20% of all those people who are vital to our current crisis were born in another country, are green card holders, are immigrants to the United States. So spare me the politics during this particular time. Let's get together. Let's not divide our country. Let's not divide our country during a crisis. Let's actually come together. I don't have any intention of being quiet on this particular score. And I think a lot of people can't stand up and defend themselves or have a platform like this where I can talk to you with a lot of people listening. But there should be no tolerance for this kind of scapegoating at immigrant communities.
Thank you, Ambassador. Very strong, very clear message from you, and we appreciate that. I was so mad when the president, without any discussion really, by executive order, as you said, there's not even a dog whistle anymore, and to call it an invisible enemy is all on purpose. And as you said, it's not just CEOs. I have a list here of CEOs who are of Indian origin, running some of the greatest companies in America and the world, including Adobe and Diageo and Deloitte and The Gap and IBM and Google. I mean, we can just go on. My MasterCard, just look at this list. But also those Marines in around the world who are immigrants, and what a difference it makes for them to be able to do this and participate, but then for them to hear this and to hear our healthcare workers who are disproportionately immigrants and people of color, to hear this is so disturbing and so painful for all of us. Thank you for your words on that, Ambassador. We have lots of comments and questions coming in, so we're going to get to those as quickly as we can. We only have a few minutes left with the Ambassador. Please continue to post your comments, and if he has a chance, he'll go in and look at them later. Rick says, let's get together right now, the Beatles. That's the way to think about it. Yeah. And let me ask you about the other news of the day, which comes from the world of business. And you were in India during the telecom boom, and you certainly saw how Indian and American companies came together. You may not have had a chance to study this particular piece of news, which we are looking at on the Scroll website. Facebook buys minority stake of $5.7 billion in Reliance's Jio company and its platforms. Mark Zuckerberg said the deal will help people and businesses in India create new opportunities amid the countrywide lockdown to contain COVID-19. So first off, any reaction to that particular story, or just Indo-US business ties that you would like to share?
No, look, I think it just is an illustration of how important the US-India commercial relationship is, but also how important the digital space is in India. When the Prime Minister came in talking about wanting to connect every Indian to the internet and having high-speed internet and connect every village, there are critically important development and education and inclusion ramifications from that. So there's so much good that can come from having this kind of connectivity. So it doesn't surprise me that you see this kind of massive investment. It also just leads me to a broader point about why we are excited about this relationship. Again, I used to give this talk about the India at 2030, and how it's going to lead the world in almost every category. And one of those will be internet users, if it doesn't already. Middle class, size of the middle class will be largest. The number of college graduates will be largest. Third largest military, third largest economy. And so this, again, just points to the fact that India really, this could be an Indian century, and you see a lot of excitement in kind of the corporate America, in higher ed in America, in the nonprofit sector and development sector. But we also have some issues that we have to work through on the trade and investment side. But overall, I think the trend lines are really positive, and the story you highlighted is one example of that.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your comments. We only have a few minutes left of your time. Remind us of the title of your dissertation, which you've just finished. I think you have to defend it before we can call you.
Yeah. Give me a couple weeks before it's actually. The defense is done. So that was successful, and the submission was done. But it's not official until it's really official. So stand by it. But it's overcoming the hesitations of history and an analysis of U.S.-India ties.
So we look forward to seeing that in a book. You'll have a virtual graduation, I presume.
Apparently so, yes.
But hopefully you'll get to wear a cap and gown and pictures inside the apartment, inside your house.
Right.
Which would be very nice. So now I want to press you on, what are your future plans? You are so dynamic. You have so much insight into the world. You have specific concrete ideas on how to fix some of the problems in the world, including right here in the United States. So what are your plans?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. And, some of it has just been getting through each day. But, I started my career in public service. I started working on Capitol Hill when I was probably 18 years old, when I was a sophomore or freshman in college. Again, through the military, working in the House and the Senate and State Department. I do love public service, and it's what drives me. At some point in the future, we'll figure out when, I suspect I'd like to return to that, and who knows, possibly one day actually run for office. But we got to figure out the right time and opportunity to do that. It'd be a great privilege to serve the country in an elected capacity, but we'll see. Those opportunities are hard to come by, but that was one thing we're looking at in the future.
Thank you. That was, we're all cheering for you, and we hope for the sake of the United States that you are able to go back into the public sector and serve again. Of course, as the father of twins plus another child, you need to make as much money as you can in the public sector to afford to be able to go into the public sector, I'm sure. We have several comments that we will not be able to get to, but one of the comments here is one of the key causes of failure in the U.S. is the lack of strong public health infrastructure. Talk about that a little bit. America, we always say, Americans, especially our president likes to say, greatest country on earth, greatest this, greatest that. And our healthcare system rightly got so much praise. But now, you've seen, certainly you saw Indian prime ministers and ministers and all coming to the U.S. for surgery, things like that. Does this change that equation?
Yeah, I think this crisis has kind of laid bare maybe a bit of a bifurcated system that we have, and the impact on minority communities and folks from of less economic means are being hit much harder. And healthcare has been the principal kind of political electoral issue over the last few elections, whether it's presidential or midterm, and I expect it will continue to be, as people really try to wrestle this question down about access and cost. Same questions that are being debated in India and other countries. There's no question the excellence of our doctors and nurses and our facilities. I think the question is it reachable? Is it available to people at all rungs of the economic ladder? And clearly it's not. It's just not. And we've got to figure out how to solve that problem. And that was very much the debate in our 2018 midterms. It was what President Obama fought so hard for. It will clearly be a defining issue in this fall's presidential election, no question about it. But I think the American people are basically saying that more people should be covered and more people should have kind of greater access to healthcare at an affordable price. And that gets political very, very quickly. But some things are worth fighting for. And I think good healthcare is certainly worth one of those. But again, maybe, Sree, we can end on a positive, which is just thanking all of those healthcare workers and doctors and nurses who have done so much. And I just see these pictures of them, braving not only the operating rooms and the emergency rooms, but sitting with the families and spending time away. And then all those other people, the grocery store workers, the people who deliver the mail, everyone who's doing their part to get us to the other side. Just thank you so much. We're really so grateful.
And we're just looking at the front page of scroll.in right now. Sitting upon a volcano, doctors in Bengal ring the alarm bell over the state's low testing numbers. And that's what you alluded to, that's what's one of the things that we have to see. How much does testing really matter, both in the United States and in India? Are we testing enough in both places? Shweta says, really enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much, Shweta, for watching. We appreciate that. And before you go, Ambassador, I'm just going to very quickly show folks a little hint of the Facebook Live that we did just 4 years ago.
Okay.
And it was so much fun. This is you taking us through Roosevelt House. Talk about living in that august home, what that meant to you, the residence of the United States ambassador to India.
Yeah. Well, what's great about what you're seeing there, that there's a large foyer there, and there are pictures of every U.S. president meeting with every Indian prime minister. And so you can go through this great historical tour just by looking at those pictures, and you see these up and down moments in the relationship. But again, we were the caretakers, right? We were the tenants. As President Obama used to remind us, we had our kind of few minutes in the stream of history where we were trying to make sure we didn't let people down, and that we actually made things a little better for the next group of people that would come in and take over. And that's how our system goes. And so, again, what a fabulous honor and privilege to be there in that iconic house. And hopefully we made things a little bit better and a little bit stronger for the next team. And it'll be like that for years and years on end. So it was special memories. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And Stefan says, thank you, Ambassador Verma, for all your goodwill and great work. Humanity first. We love that. And Stefan is hosting his own show on social media. You can check him out. Find him and follow him. It's called the Sreenet Social Hour. And he's interviewing a terrific photographer and part of a series of photographer interviews. And this time he's interviewing a Pulitzer Prize winner. It's on Thursday. So do check that out and find Stefan Kaplan. He's at Sreenet Social. And Jonathan says, great show. Thank you. Laura Silverman says, love that tour of the ambassador's residence. Beautiful and impressive. And she remembers that from 4 years ago, which is pretty amazing. And then Kavita says, interesting. I hope she means that in the best possible way. that was interesting. And Rose says, thank you for the great discussion and your service, Ambassador Varma. And that's truly who you are. You've been giving of yourself, and your family had to sacrifice as well. But we're so glad that you're together, you're safe, and you're able to spend some time with us. I'm going to do some housekeeping and saying goodbye, but I'm going to let you go, Ambassador Varma. A final thought from you before you go, and what we should watch for, what should we be thinking, and then we hope you'll come back in a few months or when the time is right to share some more news.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do that. And again, thank you for doing this. I think, look, as I said, as Dr. Fauci and others have said, this is a public health crisis, but we can get through this. It will be difficult. I think the second quarter here in the United States will be a difficult economic period, but we really can get through this. And we're much better off working together across our country, but across multiple countries. Let's not put up walls to divide us. Let's get people together. Let's think about our common humanity and our shared interest in making sure people get better and do better in the weeks and months ahead.
That's the lovely note to end on. Our guest has been Richard Verma. He's on Twitter. Please follow him, Richard R. Verma, Verma. Please follow him. Please connect with him and check out the work that he's doing and what he's sharing online. And we'll let you go, Ambassador Varma. Thank you so much for being here. And one of the things that you have to do on these online shows that you don't see on television is I'm going to reintroduce you after you're gone, because people are watching kind of halfway or have just joined. I want to give them an incentive to watch the replay, which will start as soon as I'm done. So
Okay.
that's one of the things I'm learning as we're doing these shows. This is not television. You're used to a much higher level of production values and production quality. This is me just trying to fumble around here and learn how to do this.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, folks. That was Richard Varma, Ambassador Richard Varma. Thank you so much to His Excellency for being here. We're so grateful that he could spend time with us. Hope you enjoyed the show. Give us your feedback. Please go in and tell us what you thought of the show and how we can make it better. My email is sree@sree.net, sree@sree.net. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to connect. We also have multiple ways for you to connect with us. You can go to our YouTube on YouTube channel, sree.net or sreenet on YouTube, and you can connect. Let me remind you, you just saw a terrific show with Ambassador Richard Varma, who is the former ambassador of the US to India, is vice chairman of the Asia Group, and he is a leading expert on South Asia. And you can watch this entire conversation as soon as I'm over. It will replay, and you can see this, and you can join me every single day as long as we're in lockdown in New York. We are going to do this show where we're talking about different aspects of the crisis. And you can see our contact information is right on the screen, sree@sree.net. I am honored that scroll.in would partner with us and live stream us on their platforms. Scroll.in is India's leading independent source of news, analysis, and culture, with a focus on in-depth political and cultural commentary. It aims to add critical perspectives to the most important news stories shaping contemporary India. Its journalists have won both local and international awards, including the Goenka Excellence in Journalism Awards and the Red Ink Awards for Excellence in Journalism. Please follow scroll_in. Please connect with me on Twitter. And let's thank our wonderful sponsors for making all of this possible. Our sponsors have been Primitive, a new future of work book from Hachette, a provocative look at how the world's most successful people tap their primal instincts during moments of adversity, by Marco Greenberg. Barbara Corcoran says Primitive provides a path forward to unleash your inner entrepreneur. And the website is primitivebook.com, primitivebook.com. Congrats to our friend Marco Greenberg, and thank you for supporting this show by being a sponsor. We're also sponsored by Girl Scouts of Greater New York. Help us donate 100,000 boxes of cookies to healthcare workers. Donate today by going to bit.ly/gscookies1, bit.ly/gscookies1, and your money will help get boxes of cookies to our great healthcare workers, 100,000 boxes, so you can make a donation that will support the healthcare workers, support the Girl Scouts, and support our show. And we're grateful that this money for the ad came from an anonymous third-party donor. We're so grateful for their support. If you would like to support us, please email sree@sree.net, sree@sree.net. Maybe you don't have a business you want to support, but maybe you have a nonprofit you'd like to support. Here's your chance to do so. Please email me, sree@sree.net. That's it, folks. Show 41 is done. 41 days in a row here in New York. I am so honored that you would all be with us. Thank you for your time and attention. A reminder of shows coming up. First, we have an incredible show that I'm hosting that's not part of this, but just part of celebrating Shakespeare's birthday. So on Thursday, if you're watching live, on Thursday at 6 a.m. Eastern or 11 a.m. at Stratford-upon-Avon, we are doing a gathering of all the organizations that are based in Stratford, where they're on lockdown, and we're going to celebrate the 456th birthday of William Shakespeare. I'm so honored that I get to host that show and do the interviews. We're going to meet people from the Royal Shakespeare Company. We're going to meet people from the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, which is hosting the entire program. And we're also going to meet people from the church where Shakespeare is buried. We're going to meet people from the school that he went to, all the organizations that support Stratford. That is happening at 10 a.m. GMT. 10 a.m. GMT on Thursday. Hope you will watch for that. We also have our regular show at 9 a.m. Eastern on Thursday. You're going to meet representatives of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, and we're going to talk about how they're handling COVID-19. And then on Friday, we have a very exciting, unusual program at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are talking about love and relationships under COVID-19. The Wall Street Journal relationships expert is going to talk about dating, love, and relationships under COVID. And we're going to be joined by the executive director of the Kinsey Institute, which does research into these and other topics. So that just gets us to Friday. We have Saturday with the drama critic, the theater critic of Vogue. Adam Green's going to be fantastic. And then on Sunday is our Sunday Positivity Night. So lots going on. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting us. It means so much that you're doing so. Please email me, sree@sree.net, sree@sree.net, and I can say goodbye to all of you. There are so many comments still coming in, and including Shweta saying thank you for your service, Ambassador. Sree, what you have done for the world at large with these 3 COVID-19 calls is so appreciated and so helpful. Thank you, Stefan, and thank you for being here. The show will run again right now on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can watch the replay and start a watch party if you're on Facebook. Let your friends watch, tag them right now so that they can see. And we're going to say goodbye. Thank you.